Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I'm going to be sharing how I made some quilling paper geranium flowers. Mine are going to be pink. The majority of the flower is going to be the light pink paper I have here, and then a couple of the petals are going to be rose colored. I also have some dark purple here and a little bit of a mint green just for a couple of accents that I will show in a minute. And all those papers are 1/8 inch wide, but you can use thinner if you want to. I have my needle tool here, some quilling tweezers and scissors. The majority of my project is going to be made on the thinner teeth here of the Super Looper quilling comb. I have my paper crimper as well. I'm using this third section of teeth here for part of my petals. I have my Elmer's glue wall and my needle nose container, and then I also have Aleene's tacky glue for when we put all of our petals together. And then I do have here as well a quilling mold. I'm going to show how I'm going to use that at the end. And then also I have my corkboard covered in parchment paper and some pins. And I'm going to need that later on. Now here is my reference for the type of geranium I'm making because there's a million of them, but this was actually taken at my wonderful sweet mother-in-law's house. These are her flowers, and I just really love the shape of them and the colors. So that's what we are going for today. Now to start off, I am going to be making some thicker quilling strips here. Right now I have an 18-inch piece of Quilt Creations light pink. And to make my double thick strips, I fold them down the middle and put a steady but thin line of the Elmer's glue all the way from that half point to the end. And then I fold it back up and push it all together, make sure there's no air bubbles. I'm going to make about 4 of these for each flower that I make. And this is going to be used for what we use in our paper crimper. Now I also need some thicker pieces of that purple that I showed. This is also from Quilt Creations, the color called Grape. This is going to be kind of the veins in our flower. If you go back to that reference sheet, you'll see that in the darker pink petals, it sort of had some darker kind of lines going through it. This I started off by making a double thick strip, and then once that dried, folded it in half again to make it like 4 strips all together. And I'm going to need pretty much just one of those for each flower. Now while all those thicker strips dry, we're going to go ahead and start making our petals. So I'm going to start off with a piece of the light pink paper again. And even though I'm making this on my quilling comb, I like to do a couple of turns on my needle tool first to make what I call an anchor. I find it easier to start a comb with this type of anchor, and it just keeps that center nice and round. And what I'm going to do is start with the long tail of the strip in the back and just pull it forward 1 tooth at a time. And I am counting down 7 of these loops, and that's 7 after the anchor has been put on. So not counting the tooth that the anchor is on, 7 loops after that. So it's just a matter of having the tail on the back, pulling it through the next tooth, and wrapping it back around again. And you'll notice that I'm not using any glue for this part at all yet. The friction of the paper is going to hold this in shape until we get to the end. Sometimes your paper might get a little twisted, just like it did there. Don't sweat it. You can pull it back around again, straighten it out, and get it pulled through. And just try to make it as even as you can. Try to get those loops lined up one on top of the other. And we're coming up here, almost done. And now I'm going to show you where I count, not counting the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops, and then tear off any excess. So at this point is the only spot where I'm going to glue this. And then you just push it back up. Oops. Actually get some glue out of here. There we go. And then push it back up just to seal. And just that little bit of glue right on the end there is what's going to keep this whole shape intact. So you can slide it right off your comb, and that's what it should look like. Now for each of the all pink petals, you're going to need 3 of the same size, so that's 7 loops, and then 2 that are a little bit smaller. So here you go, a little bit more of a close-up. The center plus 7 loops, and then 2 of the center plus 6 loops, so a little bit smaller. And then to put it all together, you're going to want to make all of these into a point. Don't squeeze so much on the end with your anchor. You want to keep that kind of a bit of a more of a circle, but then all the way down the rest, give it a nice tight squeeze all the way down, so it's sort of a long spike. There you go. So there's all 5 pieces in long spikes, and I have my same Elmer's glue here. I don't need to pull out the tacky glue just yet. That might be a bit much for what we're doing here. All we're doing is stacking these from side to side. We're starting with our bigger pieces. That's going to be the center of our stack, the ones with the 7 loops. So just a little bit of a line of glue from end to end. Keep that point nice and sharp, but don't squish too much on the other end, because again, we still want those loops to be seen on the other end. So here's the 3rd one of that longer set. It's a good idea in this project too to keep a damp paper towel or rag or something that you can wipe your gluey fingers off, because this stacking motion can definitely get some glue to squirt out the side, and you might want to wipe your fingers off a little bit. So once you have your 3 together that are the same size, you're going to put the ones that are slightly smaller with the 6 loops on either side of that. So you're kind of getting a little fan shape here. Get it all together, keep squishing, keep that point sharp, but not smushing the other end too much. There we go. See how it's not flat on the other side, but it's got a nice point to it. You're going to need 3 of those for each flower. And now we're going to move on to our other 2 petals on our flower, which are going to be mostly this rose colored paper. And this is going to be done pretty much in the same way as the light pink. You're doing the same motion on your quilling comb, putting the anchor on, putting the tail to the back, and then wrapping it around, adding 1 loop at a time. This one I'm showing here is going to be the smallest of what we need. This one is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops, tearing off the excess. Like I said, exactly the same as the first one. And I have another little chart here coming up in a second, so you can see exactly how big or how many loops I used. And this is only for this specific tool. If your quilling comb is different, you might use more teeth or less teeth. You can use as a regular hair comb for this as well. If you have one that has nice tight teeth to it, that is always an option. I used one for many years before I got this super looper comb here. So for each of these rose colored petals, you're going to need a few more of these shapes that you make on your quilling comb. There's all the ones I'm going to need for each petal. And another label here. I have a center plus 7 loops, 3 of those as well, 4 centers plus 6 loops, and then 2 center plus 5 loops. So it goes progressively smaller, starting with the 3 biggest ones in the center, 2 slightly smaller on the side, and then 1 slightly smaller on the other side. And then just like we did with the lighter colored flower, we're going to stack these rose colored flowers in the same way, except that quadruple thick purple strip that we made in the beginning, that's now nice and dry, and we're going to use that sandwiched between a few of these rose colored shapes. So you can see there, I don't line the purple all the way to the end. I stop it right around where that center anchor stops, and added just enough glue to cover that side, and then stacked that on. Now I add another line of glue all the way down, stacking up another of the biggest pieces. So get that together. I like to start in the middle with the biggest pieces, just makes it easier for my brain to make sure that everything's lining up the right way. So get that together nice and straight. And then we're going to do the same thing, another strip of this purple, measure it, kind of mark it with my thumbnail there so I know where to cut it. And then same thing, we're just going to put some glue around right where the anchor center spot stops and stack another purple strip on there. And then adding the third of the largest pieces. So this is my 3 pieces that are going to make up the center of this petal. And again, keep making sure you get that spike on the end as much as you can. This shape does kind of want to keep opening up, sort of like an accordion, just kind of keep stretching out a little bit. It's okay, it's not going to completely bounce back, but keep trying to keep that point on the end as much as you can. So now once we have our 3 center largest pieces of this flower together, we're going to put on 2 of the next size down. So I have one of those here, measuring that up again with another purple strip in between, and snip that. And then just like before, a little bit of glue and our purple strip, and then we're going to add on our next piece. So again, this is the first of our slightly smaller sizes where I had the center anchor and then 6 loops. So it's just slightly smaller. I'm going to do 1 on one side, and then we're going to flip this little piece around and put another of that 6 loops on the other side, also with a purple stripe in between. And I'm just going to jump a little bit forward here and show what that looks like. So here it is all done. We have our 3 biggest pieces in the middle, separated by a purple stripe, and then on either side of that, another purple stripe, and then a slightly smaller piece. So kind of similar to the light pink that we started off in the same shape. And now we're going to keep adding the rest of our rose-colored pieces in, but without an extra purple line separating it. If you wanted to keep going with that, you're welcome to. I just wanted to make it a little bit more simple. So there's another one with 6 loops, and then sticking on the same side here, instead of going back and forth, I'm going to put one of my smallest pieces on the side there. Now this is where it definitely starts getting a little tricky to keep this together without kind of popping around or sliding through your fingers. Just keep going slowly. Don't squeeze it too hard. I know I was stressing keeping the point on the bottom, but the more pieces you add, the less it's going to be a sharp point on the other end, more just a little bit skinnier. So don't worry too much about it. Just get these on. Try to keep it in a fan shape as much as you can. You know, pinch it here like I'm showing, but don't go too hard because the middle will just pop right out on you and it'll mess up all your work. So this is what we're going for. Get any glue, you can wipe that off. Almost like a scallop shell kind of shape. And for each flower, you're going to need 2 of those. Once it's dry, you can actually even push it a little bit more. just to get the shape a little bit more. I did find that a little bit easier once all that glue has dried. And now I am grabbing that double thick light pink strip that I made in the beginning and running it through my paper crimper on the third smallest set of teeth here. I'm going to need a few of these. And I like to use the double thick strips in the paper crimper when I am doing something like what I'm going to be doing here, which is wrapping these shapes. I just find that having a little bit of a sturdier paper, you can use like a cardstock or something like this if you have it in a color you like. I just find the crimping shape kind of holds up just a little bit better for what we're doing here. And what we're doing is wrapping it around all of our petals individually, not super tightly. I don't want to stretch it out over these pieces of our petals. Just very gently wrapping around, using some tacky glue on either end, no glue in the middle. I didn't find that necessary. Not pushing down too hard, not stretching it out at all. This is what's going to kind of aid in the fluttery look of each of the petals that we made. So here's the other end, snipped off the excess, and then this is just tacky glue on my parchment paper there. Just getting it pressed. And then I'm actually going to do the same thing again. I'm going to make a second layer to this. So again, little tacky glue on the end because that's going to get this set quickly. I don't want the crimpy ruffles to match up exactly. So I sort of moved it back a little bit so that you could really see both layers of the crimped paper. This kind of aids in the extra flutteriness, if that's a word, of the edge of the petal. It's okay if it pops off a little bit. I'm kind of rushing this here just to kind of save some time on the video. And once get to the other end, get that glued down. It's okay if it does, the two layers of crimping do meet up here or there. It's kind of tricky to make it exactly a different layer all the way around. At some point, sometimes it does catch up with the other one and line right up. That's okay. The overall look, you're gonna be able to see two different layers. So there is that. I'm going to do that to both pieces of the dark pink and then all three of the light pinks, all with two layers. I'll get to that last one off camera. So here I have all 5 pieces of my petals for my geranium. I'm going to start putting them together. So I'm going to use tacky glue for this as well because it's going to just hold it all together while I mess around with my pieces here. So think back to that reference page I showed in the beginning of my mother-in-law's geranium. It had the 2 pink, the darker pink rose-colored petals on top, kind of layered on each other, and then 3 of the smaller light pink petals towards the bottom. So just with some tacky glue on the edges, I layered the bigger ones, kind of shingled them, and then the bottom lighter colored petals, I have 2 coming from the sides and the bottom, and then 1 sort of stacked in the middle. And you can just glue these 2 together just like this, call it a day. Lovely flowers with a little bit of height to them, or you can also mold them together and make them a little bit more dimensional. So to do that, I am putting some tacky glue in between these 2 sections and then putting them on top of each other. So at this point, you could just let this dry and it would be a little bit flatter, maybe easier to work with in like a card or something like that. But if you do want it to be, like I said, a little bit more dimensionality to it, you can mold them here either by picking it up and putting it in the underside of a quilling mold, like I just had there, or if you don't want to have to move it a lot, you can do this technique that I discovered a few months ago and I showed in a few videos now, where I just sort of bunch up my parchment paper on my work board and just kind of pin everything in place, and it will dry kind of in that valley of the parchment paper, and that works really well on something like this. So while that's drying, I have 9 inches of a mint green paper here, and I'm just using this, making a tight coil by rolling it all the way from end to end on my needle tool and then gluing it while it's still all rolled up. That's just going to be kind of the center of my flower. The geraniums that I showed, where the petals are growing out, they sort of have a really, really light green center where they begin. It's kind of hard to do that in paper, so this is sort of my artistic license way of showing that little detail. And I decided to skip sort of the stamen and all that. It just made it a little bit too busy when I was playing around with it. So that, placed in the center of our flowers, is going to be that. And here's a couple more that I made, and you can see how nicely they kind of rock back and forth once they are dried there. You can see the lines, and you can see the fluttery edges, and there's kind of a purpley version as well. That's about it. So just some new details to try in your quilling, a new way to get a little bit extra color by adding those lines. So I hope that's kind of inspiring to some people. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, as always, please leave them in the comment section and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. I always leave links to all the tools and supplies I use in the description box for each video, so you can find that information there. And you'll also find a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can pick up some quilling extras and see other ways to support the channel, which really does keep it growing from week to week, and is always, any support there is greatly, greatly appreciated and does make a huge difference. So thank you very much for that. And as always, be kind to yourself, look out for your neighbors. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for the next video, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.